Hello everybody and welcome back to Operation Logistics, where we are in a position where we're generating some biomes here for our subhexes. And as you can see, we've got our cluster of 3 forests right there. And then if we go down here, we've got our forest right in the center. And then come back here and we've got our 3 forests. So even though we are using the same subhexes for every hex here, we have unique hexes being generated every time. But when we go back to the same hex, we have exactly the same generation. Excellent. That's exactly what I was looking for. However, we do have an awful lot of magenta hexes, which means we have a lot of hexes that are not being assigned a biome yet. So we're iterating through this. We might as well, at this point, go ahead and get ourselves some hexes. Or rather, some biomes. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. And how do I want to do this exactly? Well, this is going to be exactly the same as our Voronoi that we have done over here. So what we need to do is we need to determine what our nearest hex is from our seed list. And we don't actually have a seed list right now. So let's go ahead and create one, shall we? Let's go up here and we will create a list. So this is going to be a list of subhex visuals. And we are going to call this seeds. And we'll go ahead and initiate this equals new list of subhex visuals. There we go. Okay, so we have that. Now, when we actually do this, we need to go ahead and add it to the list. So let's go ahead and add. So seeds.add subhexes choice. Okay, so we add it in before we end here, but that's only for rural. We need to do the same thing for urban. There we go. Okay, so we now have our list of subhexes. So now we need to iterate through that and find our nearest list, and we're going to do that in basically this same way here. So I'm just going to copy and paste all of this in. Now, this isn't exactly going to work as presented here, obviously. We have 5 errors. So let's go ahead and use seeds instead of Voronoi seeds. There we go. And instead of nearest here, we are going to need a nearest, so let's go ahead and say subhex visual nearest equals null for right now. Is that what I did before? Actually, I just went with the very first one in the list. So yeah, that's fine. We'll go with seed 0. Perfect. So int k equals, and actually we could use j for this. Let's go ahead and do that. There we go. So, now we need to say, well, what's our nearest one? Well, we need to go ahead and check that, and the best way to do that would obviously be to say subhexes i.transform.position instead of object, which doesn't exist, minus seeds j.transform.position.square magnitude, and then we just check to see if that's the closest one, and then we know which one is closest. Once we know that, then all we have to do is say subhexes i.biome equals, and we're going to have that be equal to nearest.biome. And that should be it for the Voronoi. Theoretically, we should have no more magenta unless I missed something, which I may or may not have. Let's find out. Okay. Hey, look at that! So this is urban. We can see we've got our industrial center going down here. We've got a couple pockets of residential over here. And we've got a couple pockets of commercial up over here. And if we zoom out and back in on the same hexes... Hang on. There we go. You can see that we get the same one every time. Fantastic. Let's check our rural areas. Yeah! So we've got farmland over here, we've got a little town up over here, and then we've got forests flanking the farmland. I like it. Now, it does bear noting that there is no continuity. Like, for example, here, there's a forest here. And there actually is a forest up there. But there's no real continuity. Wow, there's a lot of town over there. Maybe a little too much town. Maybe we want to weight this a little bit. So we can do that. Instead of just doing a flat random dot range, I think this is good for urban. Don't get me wrong. I think this is fine. But for rural, maybe we want to weight this generation ever so slightly. So up here, instead of doing random.range 0, 3, maybe we want to do something along the lines of 0, 100, and then saying if biome is greater than, say... Okay, the one we want to limit is town. So if biome is greater than, say, 80, then biome equals 0. Like that. And then we can say else if biome is greater than, say, 40, then biome equals... Well, we want this biome to be 2. So biome equals 0, else biome equals 1. Okay, so now there's a 40% chance that it will be forest or farmland, and only a 20% chance that it will generate town. So now we've weighted that a little bit, and let's see how that feels. And we can not hard code that later on. Yeah, I like that. That's pretty good. Yeah. Ooh, no town at all. It's possible. Yeah. I like it. Okay, that's a lot of industrial. That's a lot of commercial. Yep, this is working quite well. I like that a lot. Okay, so one thing I'd like to do is maybe turn down the spotlight intensity for the subhex light, wherever that is. I've forgotten where that light is. Let's go into the subhex visual here and say light script equals highlight. Oh, we're using the same light, we're just changing it. Right. Okay, so on mouse enter, we could then do something like, do we have the actual light script? We do. We do have the actual light script. So we can say light script dot intensity equals, and we can grab the intensity up here. So private float light intensity, and we can right here say light intensity equals light script dot intensity, and then we can say light script dot intensity equals, and intensity is a floating point, right? Not an integer, I'm assuming. So we'll try 1F on mouse enter, and then when we exit, let's just reset the intensity, and actually we'll do that before we enable it. Let's reset the intensity to be light intensity. Okay. So now we can adjust. It's hard-coded right now, and I'm not a huge fan of that, but we can adjust this kind of on a case-by-case basis. So out here, the light will be where it is, and then in here, you can see it's exactly the same. Yeah, that feels a lot better, having the light intensity be 1 instead of, I think it's, what, 3 out here? Yeah. Yeah. But if we were to change it out here, and we would have to do this outside of runtime because this is determined at runtime, but if we were to change the intensity to, for some reason, be 6, then if we were to come in here, then you can see our intensity is 6, and it goes back to an intensity of 6 out here. Yeah. Actually, I don't hate that intensity of 6. I actually think that's pretty good. And of course it's not casting shadows, but that's fine. Yeah, I like that. I think that's pretty decent. Okay, that's nice. That's nice right there. Maybe bring it down slightly to 5. But otherwise, that's good. Okay, so what else do we need to do? Oh, yeah, there is one other thing that I wanted to do, and that was that I wanted to tweak our thumbnail a little bit. See, I was looking at this, as I often do, and there were a couple of issues with it that I wanted to smooth out. For one thing, this corner. I hate this corner. Let's go ahead and fix that, shall we? With a pixel brush, let's make sure we have our correct layer here. Hang on, this is not the correct layer at all. Is this the correct layer? No. Is this the correct layer? Yes. This is the layer we're looking for. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and fill that corner in. There we go. And now, as far as this thing goes, I do want to make this substantially better. And I think the way to go about doing this is going to be via Inkscape. Okay. If it opens. There we go. Fantastic. So, let's just go ahead and make ourselves a real quick triangle here. And I want it to be facing this direction. That'll work. We'll have it be black. And this is all fine. Let's go ahead and export this to our desktop. Path 14485.ping. Sure. Why not? Okay. So we now have that, which is substantially nicer. And on the desktop, let's just go ahead and grab it and place it here-ish. And we can ditch it now. Okay, so with this here, I do want to position it, and we're going to have to scale it a little bit. But let's go ahead and place it, you know, right around here or so. And let's scale that down to be, I don't know, maybe 50%. Is that about right? That looks about right. Maybe it's a little small. Yeah, I think that's a little bit on the small side. So let's go ahead and shrink that down to, instead of 50%, let's go for something along the lines of 60%. And we need to be in both directions. Oh, no, no, no. 60%. No, not 600%. 60%. Okay. And that is much, much smoother. Nice. Oops, I want to be moving this guy a little bit. And we'll place the center right about... we're pretty close to centered on that line. But I do want to bring it up ever so slightly, maybe. How does that look? Certainly looks better. I do think that this needs to move this direction a little bit. Maybe, oh, this one. Maybe a little bit more. Somewhere around here. Thereabouts. Yeah. I think that's decent. Okay. And let's go ahead and save that. As you can see, this is episode 14. I'm currently recording episode 17. I haven't done thumbnails in a little bit. But that's fine. We got our thumbnail updated. I'm much happier with the corners on it now. Okay. So, with that in mind, what is next? Well, we have our biomes being generated at this point. So maybe it is time to actually start populating tiles a little bit? I don't know. I mean, that's going to massively increase our draw calls. There's no doubt about that. But maybe... yeah, that is a possibility. But we should definitely start considering sub-hexes at this point. So, how exactly will all of that work? Well, sub-hexes are going to be the same exact grid as sub-hexes. So let's go ahead and duplicate this for right now. And we are going to call this sub-hexes. There we go. And let's go ahead and take a quick look here. And we can scale all of these down. These are all scaled here, which is a little awkward. But we can scale this down perhaps here. 0.1, 0.1, 0.1. Okay, so our height is obviously a little bit off. But we can grab each of our map hexes inside of here and just bump them up ever so slightly. Right to about... right about there will be good. And there you can see we now have sub-hexes. And it will be exciting. As you can see, these aren't perfectly... actually, they are perfectly aligned. It's just that there's the gap there that I modeled in, which is perfectly fine. One thing we may wish to consider is why these are all currently hex-colored green. Like, mesh-colored green. It's a good question, but ultimately it'll be changed soon. So one thing we could do is in the subhex manager, we could create ourselves a new function here. Public void clear mesh colors. And this would just reset them to, I don't know, probably magenta is my guess. So all we would need to do is copy this for loop, stick this here, and then say .set overlay color. And we'll just set that to color.magenta. I don't know if we'll use this, but it'll be a handy function to have potentially later on. Subhex is not actually being used, so I think we can go ahead and go to our scripts folder at this point and delete subhex, because we're nearly done with our subhexes. We are going to need some subhex stuff. And let's go ahead and create ourselves a new tag and call that subhexes. And make sure that this is on the correct tag, because we don't want to be accidentally grabbing our subhexes when we want to be grabbing our subhex. Okay. So I do want to take a quick look here. All compiler errors. Hang on a moment. Really? Subhex visual then. New subhex visual. There we go. All of that's actually happening in subhex visual, so we could rename this, and in fact it might be a good idea. We are going to need to put these guys back in their list, I think. Well, actually, it seems to have carried them over. That's nice. Yeah, it carried them over. Sweet. Okay. Should not be capturing when there is a hot control. Okay, go ahead, Unity. Whatever. That's fine. Okay, so let's take a quick look here, and let's see in our scene view. Oh, hello. That's exciting. Okay, so this is our hexes here. We can't actually see them because of their position. Let's go ahead and raise them up in play mode so we can actually see them a bit. Now, of course, they aren't properly set up here, But we can make them be properly set up here by doing something along the lines of this. Okay, and you can see that our sub-hexes are quite high up right there. You can also see that it's not changing our spotlight, which is to be expected. Now, of course, the sub-hexes should not be showing at this time. So let's go ahead and disable our subhexes and sub-subhexes. Actually, we don't need to. Do we? How are we turning them off when we zoom out of the base hex? It is via subhexmanager.gameObject.setActive. So yeah, we don't need these active at the beginning, I believe. Although it doesn't catch them with the gameObject.finds, which is why we got so many errors there, if they're not active. So we do actually need them active at the beginning if I'm going to be lazy. So let's go ahead and do it this way. This is fine. We've got a whole bunch of subhexes there, but that's fine. And then if we click on these, we want to be able to zoom in further to the sub-subhexes at that point. So there's a couple of things that we're going to be needing. First off, let's create ourselves a folder to organize this a little bit. And first thing is subhexes. We're going to toss these guys into the subhexes folder. Secondly, let's create another new folder. There we go. And we'll call it sub-subhexes. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and create a C# script sub-subhexes and a C# script. Come on. There you go. Sub-subhex manager. And these are going to be, at least at first, carbon copies of our subhex visual and subhex manager. To the point where I'm literally just going to... Actually, subhex manager. I'm going to literally just copy and paste right now. The entire thing. Hang on. There we go. Okay. Copy and paste the entire thing. And then we're just going to rename this to sub-subhexes. Or rather, just sub-subhex. And we'll rename this here as well. Because Unity gets grumpy if things aren't the same name as their file. Go ahead and reload that. That's fine. Close that. And yes, I'm well aware that we've got that going on. Okay, so sub-subhex manager can then be named sub-subhex manager. And rather than this enum being biomes, we're going to go for this enum being buildings. And we're going to get rid of all of that for right now. Okay. We have no issues now, right? I think we're fine. Yes, we are fine. Fantastic. So, when we click on a sub-subhex, we do want this to still happen. But we want more control over the cam.toggle override. And we also want... Well, this will only be happening when the camera override is currently happening. So, we're going to need to modify that a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on this here. So, selected world hex, we will need a few things to change here. Obviously, this isn't going to work perfectly as is. However, I think that's something that we can do in the next episode. So I'm going to go ahead and put a cut in here, and next episode, we will work on getting our sub-subhexes working. See you all then.